afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. Welcome to the Inclusive Technologies webinar, which is hosted by Cognitive Information Technology here at Monash University. My name is Kerry Rowe. I'm General Manager of the Faculty of IT and I'll facilitate today's session. I'd like to begin by respectfully asking you to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, as well as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we're meeting on today. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm very happy to introduce Melanie Tran today. Melanie Tran is thought leader at the intersection of design innovation, disability, technology and social impact. She's a UX designer hire, 2019 Top 100 Women of Influence, Financial Review. Melanie is a designer, an innovator, an activist, and a social entrepreneur. Her work as a UX designer and social entrepreneur has been recognised internationally, including being named winner of the London International University's Global Here for Good Award in 2018. The award recognises a student from the London Network who is using education as a platform to help create positive social change. Melanie's youth experience, developed skills, and knowledge allow her work to span the disability, social impact, and technology sectors. With over years' experience and through her role as a UX designer, Melanie specialises in bringing together the worlds of business, design, and social impact. Back in 2017, she was selected as one of the Lower Global Fellows, an international fellowship for young social entrepreneurs. Following her success, Melanie has become a sought-after international public speaker, presenting at TEDx Youth at Sydney, TEDx Sydney Pitch Night, Leadership Summit, WorldUsability.com Australia, and a keynote at Google, opening their first ever Asia Pacific UX Design Summit. So we're absolutely delighted to have Melanie here with us today. I'd just like to put some apologies in for Professor Melanie Tran, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Associate Dean, who unfortunately can't make it with us today, as she's leading an ED&I discussion right now at another conference. We'll be recording today's session, and the recording will be accessible online via the website. So don't worry, we'll get an email explaining how we will be able to access that. For those who are joining us virtually today, you'll notice that your mic is on mute. So you won't be able to unmute yourself, but I'll just to make sure that we don't have any interruptions in the background. So if you've got any questions, please pop them into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. If you don't have a question, but you'd like to share your thoughts, you're welcome to pop them in chat anytime. And if someone reading out your questions at the end, it's probably going to be, and Melanie will be able to answer your questions at the end of her talk. Melanie is going to speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A opportunities at the end. If you happen to be in the room, please raise your hand. We'll make sure that the mic can be passed across to you. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Melanie Tran.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you to all you amazing humans in the digital space or in the physical room. Thank you for letting me hijack your afternoon and spending your lunchtime with you. I wanted to take this time to just get you to take a moment and take a look at the screen in front of you right now. And what do you see when you look at me? Apart from the plant behind me that makes it look like I have a plant coming out of my hand. But apart from that, I'm curious to see what your first impression of me is. Do you see a woman? Or do you see a person with a disability? Or both? Now hold on to that thought for a bit. And while you while you ponder on that, I want to introduce you to 3 people. And each of these individuals have helped shape my perspective as an individual and as a designer, and in my career. The first person I want to introduce you to is Peter. Peter was my design and technology teacher in high school. Peter he's funny, he's outgoing, and he's very friendly. But he also scared the crap out of me. I remember there was one time in high school when we were asked to choose elective subjects for the next year. And I remember the teachers telling us to choose wisely, to choose subjects that we are passionate about and potentially might want to pursue a career in. I remember that day I sat in my design and technology class and I stared at that piece of paper. And as I was staring at that piece of paper, I also happened to observe my classmates around me. And I remember in that moment, I was admiring the freedom that they had in their bodies, like the way they get up and walk across the room, or like the way the fingers would fly furiously across the keyboard as they type on the computer. And for some odd random reason, I also noticed the chairs that they were sitting on. The typical cold, hard plastic chair. And in that moment, I actually looked at myself and I thought, thank God I bought my own chair. Well, while I was busy daydreaming, as you do in class, Peter pulled up a chair next to me and he asked me, what do you want to do what are your life goals, Mel? Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? What are your career aspirations? In that moment, I looked at him and I asked, what can I do? And then he looked at me and then a computer in front of me. And he continued to look back and forth as if he was watching a tennis match. Until he finally pointed to the computer in front of me and he said, this can become a powerful tool that can open up opportunities that you would have never imagined possible. And from that day onwards, Peter taught me to problem solve through the creative lens. So when I finished high school, I wanted to become an industrial designer. So I approached one of the course coordinators for industrial design at a university here in Sydney, a well-known university. When I went into this meeting, I explained my situation and I asked if the course could be modified in any way. And I wasn't asking for special consideration. All I wanted was an equal opportunity to participate and to contribute. This course coordinator went on to explain that 50% of the course is theory-based, but the other 50% of the course is practical, where you have to physically build products and prototypes. And then he went on to say that this course can't be modified. And after a moment of awkward silence, he then added, look, in my opinion, I think for someone like you would be more suited to study a degree like law, because all you have to do is move him out. So it seems to me that that would be a bit more suitable for you. Well, that conversation went well, as you can see. But in saying that, thanks to him, that led me to the program director for Bachelor of Digital Media Design at Torrens University, Australia. And that's a third person I want to introduce you to. When I sat down with the program director, I had the exact same conversation with him, but we reached a completely different outcome. Because when I asked him, do you think I'm able to do this course? He said, if you're referring to academic clients, then I don't know. I literally just met you half an hour ago. But if you're referring to the physical aspect of it, then I don't see why not. Yes, there will be some parts where we may have to modify, but we are a design school after all. It is our job to think outside the box. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because there are two key lessons that I've learned in this experience. The first one is that when things don't work the way it should, or the way it could, or when things aren't designed to be flexible enough to adapt to the needs of different users, then we innovate. It is up to us to use the knowledge that we have, the resources that we have, the technology that we have access to, and the talent that surrounds us each and every day to create something better. The second thing that I've learned is that how you look matters. When we see a person in front of us, we automatically, almost by default, we start to create our own versions of a story about that person based on how they look, how they act, how they speak, and how they behave. But what we don't realize is that these stories that we create about others prevent us from seeing what's really right there in front of us. An individual with a unique perspective. An individual that deserves to be seen and to be heard. I asked you earlier in this webinar what your first impression of me was when you first saw me on this screen. I know it's a little harder because you can only see me through a tiny window. But regardless, I wondered whether you saw a woman or a person with a disability. And I asked that because I was once also asked a very similar question. Someone once asked me, have you ever felt discriminated against as a woman in tech in a traditionally male-dominated industry? My initial response was no. But it was also one of those questions that stayed with me for a while. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to wonder, have I really never been discriminated against as a woman in tech? Or is my identity as a woman overpowered by the fact that I have a disability? I don't have the answer to that. But what I can tell you is that the society that we live in today was not built for inclusion. And because our society was not built for inclusion, I've been afraid to embrace my own, to acknowledge and to embrace my own lived experience. Over the years, I've worked twice as hard and spent twice the amount of time building my knowledge in the design, tech, healthcare, and academic sectors. I worked twice as hard because I wanted to be known as a subject matter expert in these areas and not as a person with a disability. Brené Brown talked about the concept of vulnerability and courage in one of her books called Dare to Lead. And in the book, she talked about how a good leader should and could embrace vulnerability and courage. But to be honest, I've always been afraid to unpack this concept and to try and understand what this actually means to me. Because whenever I tried to do that, the same two questions would replay in my mind over and over again. If I tell my story as a woman in tech in a male-dominated industry, will I be seen as less than? Because we know that the battles of women's rights and gender equality still exist. If I tell my story as a person with a disability, will I be seen as weak? Because we know that the battles of social inclusion and discrimination still exist. I can't sit here and tell you that I love my disability, because I don't. And most of the time, it's actually a pain in the butt. But what I can tell you is that it has helped me understand the importance of unique perspectives and to embrace my own lived experience. It has helped me understand that the products and the services that we all use today are far more powerful when it is created by unique perspectives. It has taught me to be brave and to be bold. Brave enough to look into the eyes of those who tell me I'm not capable and that I can't do it, and say to them, watch me. It has helped me understand that it takes courage to live outside the expectations of what our society defines as normal, and to be okay with that, and to be proud of that, because that is what makes us different and unique. Sometimes I think about the industrial design course coordinator and how he has created his own version of a story about me without really knowing me. That wasn't the first time that I've come across this situation, and I'm sure it won't be the last. But it's also times like that that makes me wonder what this situation looks like when this is amplified across the world that we live in today. Whether that's because of gender, race, culture, education, or religion, or anything that makes us different. Just take a moment to think about the opportunities that we've lost, the talent that goes undiscovered because of this. I also tend to think about Peter and his ability to empower individuals to create opportunities, not just for ourselves, but also for others around us. There are times when I also think about the program manager for digital media design at Torrens University, Australia. And I think about how he has helped me understand that the challenges and the barriers that we face can become a powerful driving force for innovation. As I am sitting here having this conversation with you now, it also reminds me that each and every one of us right here, right now, whether it's in this virtual room or in the physical room, in that very lovely campus that I wish I could be at right now, each and every one of us here today, we have something in common. We all have a collective experience of living through the global pandemic. And before you roll your eyes and say, not another talk on pandemic, just bear with me for a moment. Take a moment to think about how the pandemic itself has changed the way we think and the way we act. It has changed the way we work, the way we learn, the way we access healthcare, and the way we connect with our loved ones. But whether it's working from home or studying online or telehealth, these concepts aren't new. We have been introduced to these concepts before we've been hit with the pandemic. But the pandemic has certainly played a role and to help accelerate the advancement in these changes. It has forced us to innovate and to adapt. Yet another example of how challenges and barriers that we experience can be turned into a driving force for innovation. But I would also like you to take a moment to think about the changes that have happened around us, even before the pandemic. Think about how Uber uses technology to redefine the transport industry. Think about how Airbnb uses technology to completely disrupt the accommodation industry. And these examples are just the tip of the iceberg. But the point that I want to emphasize is that change is happening around us. With or without the pandemic, whether we like it or not, it's coming. But regardless of these changes, there are some fundamental challenges that it still hasn't fully solved in the society that we face today, where every individual has an equal opportunity to participate and to contribute. As we continue to navigate through the global pandemic together, we also approach a fork in the road. We can either choose to rebuild a society that we were once familiar with, a society that we know was not built for inclusion, or we can use this opportunity to create the change that we want to see. We can use this opportunity to give ourselves the permission to reimagine a society that leaves no one behind. A society where every individual is seen and heard. A society that acknowledges, celebrates, and values our differences. The thing is, each and every one of you here today have a unique opportunity to do this, because you have access to 3 things that will help you along the way. The first thing is that you have access to the power of education through Monash University. And with that, it comes with knowledge and the groundbreaking research initiatives that are already happening within the walls of your university. You have access to technology that we know have no limits. You have access to your own lived experience that we know can be a powerful driving force for innovation. So, if there is one thing that I would like you to take away from today, it's to remember that it is up to us to use the knowledge that we have, the resources that we have, the talent that surrounds us each and every day, and the technology that we have access to today to help shape a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. That was really thought-provoking. It was a powerful speech. I felt myself getting a little bit emotional. There were times listening to you, you've really challenged us to think differently and understand the opportunities that are lost of all the rich talent amongst us if we don't actually reach out and use it. There's a lot of change, as you said, that has been happening recently, but the work has started and the principles a long time ago, before the pandemic. Your message around all having equal opportunity to participate and contribute was very powerful for me. So thank you very much. We've now got some time for some Q&A. So everyone that's online or perhaps in the room, you have a Q&A chat box there that you can add some questions to. I might just first of all go to the room, those that are in person over in the Woodside Centre, to see if there are any questions there. So perhaps the team could take a microphone to you if there are some questions from the room. We'll wait and hear.
This is always a fun part.
A bit. Actually, see anyone in the room at the moment. For the message that might come our way. I apologise if my sound is not great. I believe that my sound is a little echoey, but you needed to hear Melanie, not many. Any questions coming across from the Woodside Centre? I think perhaps not. I'm just waiting to see if there are any chats coming through. I think you've probably blown everyone away, Melanie. It was very interesting to hear about the three people that had such an impact on you, and even your class coordinator. Things to think about as well. It's really opening your mind about the opportunities for people. So I hope that we certainly don't do that in fact with information technology and the advice. Just a comment from Ross. Thank you very much, Ross. Just shouting out that it was a fantastic talk. Very interesting to hear from you today, Melanie, and your thoughts and your perspectives. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
A question from Matt. We'll just see if we can get Victoria to send that message across to us. We can't hear the sound here.
Perfect.
Do we have Matt's question, please? Okay, so the question for you, Melanie, is do you think things have changed since and progress has been made since your experience?
Yes, it definitely has. I think a fair bit has changed, but I think the main thing that has changed for me personally is that when I first started in the design industry, to me, design was about aesthetics and functionality. It was about how well things worked and how pretty things look. The same principle, I guess, in what I experienced in terms of how you look matters. So the way our products and services look, that also determines the success of it. But I think what I realized since then is that design is far beyond aesthetics and functionality. It's also about how we can use creativity and technology to problem solve, to use that to harness the power of creativity and technology to solve not just some of the challenges that we face together as a society, but also I think with my own lived experience and the challenges and barriers that come along with it. using design and creativity to innovate on that as well. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that, Melanie. We've got another question. How can universities better embed inclusive tech into their curriculum, do you think? What sort of things should we be looking out for?
That is a great question, and probably my favorite question whenever I'm asked this. I think a lot of it starts with education. We know that whether it's preschool, primary school, high school, higher education, it starts with getting inclusion and diversity embedded within the DNA of our education system and curriculum. And I think the best way to go about this is co-design and to be able to involve people with unique perspective. And I know we sort of have the term co-design thrown around quite a bit, but in terms of what that actually looks like in practice, it's about bringing together different voices and different perspectives, and creating a framework together where we have the academics, we have people with lived experience, whether it's gender or ability or educational culture or religion or race, but having these unique perspectives embedded in the design and development of the curriculum from the beginning. Sometimes I've come across these experiences where we talk about co-design, but it's almost like a bit of a, first of all, it's a bit of a checkbox, I guess, compliance thing where you approach a few people, check it off the list, and then carry on with developing a curriculum. But in order to truly be, to embrace those unique perspectives, you need to be able to embed these voices, these perspectives from the very beginning right through to the end. And I think also to know that there is no perfect design. There is no perfect curriculum where you can develop it once and then leave it. It's something that I know what resonated with me very well was that Monash's values of lifelong learning, and that's the same when developing curriculums anyway. It's you develop it, you learn from it, you evolve it, and you continue to improve upon that. So that's a very long-winded answer to the question, but bottom line is I think it's about bringing in the unique perspectives and carrying these perspectives throughout the entire design and development process.
That's good information for us. We've got another question. It's a cheeky one. Who do you think is leading the way with inclusive tech?
Oh, that is
No pressure. No pressure.
that is a tough one. But honestly, I think there are so many key players in the space that are already leading technology. I mean, I think you've got from big corporates like Google or Microsoft or Uber or Airbnb or the big global companies that are leading the change. But at the same time, there are also grassroots communities and startup businesses and organizations that are doing the exact same thing with the exact same impact. And I think the common perception here is that only the big players in the field can create such a change. But the reality is, I think that no matter who you are, whether you're an individual or a small startup business or a non-government or government organization, it really doesn't matter. You all, I think, have the potential and the capability to create life-changing solutions through inclusive tech.
That was a very diplomatic response. Thank you very much, Melanie. We're at 1:15 now, so I'm just going to have a quick look to see if I've got some final questions. Here we have one from Teju. So, are there any countries across the world that are getting it right in terms of inclusive design? Anything that can be an inspiration to Australia?
Sorry, Terry, do you mind repeating that question?
Yeah, are there any countries across the world that are getting it right in terms of inclusive design? Any that can be an inspiration to us in Australia?
Another great question. You are all a very sharp bunch, but always come out with a good question, hey? I don't know if I have an answer to for that. I think every country sort of has the pros and cons. There's obviously some advancements in other countries compared to others. But what I think can tell you is that even just from traveling to different countries, whether it's for work or for leisure, and being able to witness the technology that's been used in the different countries, the culture itself, and being able to see, I think, just what that country is doing well and what are the key learnings I can bring home here back in Australia has been really, really interesting. But I guess from the disability standpoint, I think Australia has been doing really fantastic to promote to help us take that crucial step towards independence, towards the control, and through the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is probably one of the largest social reforms in Australia since Medicare. And that aside, I think Australia is definitely on the map in terms of the advancements with creating that platform for inclusion and diversity. And technology, as you know, is now more than ever more important and plays a huge role in shaping that advancement as well.
That's great. Thank you, Melanie. There are all the questions that we've got time for today. On behalf of those in the room physically and those virtually that have come back, I would like to really thank you for your time, for your insights and your topic today. It was really, really interesting. We would love to hear your thoughts. We're going to provide some details on how to share your thoughts. I think there's a slide that will come up that you can QR code in with the Google Doc will be available. We'd love to get that from some evaluation. But thank you again, Melanie Tran. Lovely to meet you and lovely to hear your insights into your work.
Thank you for having me.